Fiends are defined by unfaithfulness. Unfaithfulness is the tool used to justify their exploitation, the abuse, and the perpetration of the status system they've established. Thanks to unfaithfulness, a fiend can exploit and abuse another individual because she does not consider her as an individual, or at least as an individual of equal value to hers. Why does a fiend exploit others? A fiend in herself is unable to survive, so she has to use resources, and here the resources being other people, in order to survive. In order to do so, she created an instrument called status in order to justify this exploitation. Now, exploitation is one thing, but why does the fiend abuse others? Well, abuse allows her to have a thriving existence. It is in the fiend's behavior, it is in the fiend's identity. Abusing others enhances her power in terms of exploitation, since being able to abuse others gives her more power. Exploitation becomes easier. And so, even if abuse originally wasn't meant to be a source of pleasure, it becomes. The fiend survives and thrives through others, which defines her parasitic nature, her incapability to exist on her own, her only press to be through others. The fiend cannot be by herself. The fiend cannot be alone. The fiend cannot be lonely. She has to surround herself with others in order to give orders, to take from them, to duress. The fiend needs others in order to survive. If she wants to survive, because life for her is more important, or at least survival for her is more important than creating durable relationships. So she has to be unfaithful. She has to be completely detached from others, even if she is attached to them by a relationship of dependency. The fiend can't protect herself. The fiend can't accomplish anything by herself. So she has to have other in her grasp. But at the same time, she cannot be reliable. She cannot attach herself to others, because otherwise she would be threatened. Attachment is perceived as a threat for the fiend, which is why she will abuse others and display them their inferiority. Now, we're inverting the schema here. So, inferiority was normally attached to abuse, and abuse was dependent on exploitation. Now, let's get back to the beginning. What's exploiting? Now, exploiting is creating an asymmetrical relationship in which one of the two parties has a clearer advantage on the other. The other may have no advantage at all in this relationship, but here, the other party has to display to her an advantage, has to show her that there's an advantage to this relationship. Here, for example, the fiend will create a construction named status, and by giving her servants, her dependents, status, she rewards them. So the fiend offers false rewards. these rewards are false because they enslave the character into the Fiends system, and they do not bring anything to the character other than a form of authority which is completely dependent on the Fiend herself. So in the end, your character, the character which is subservient to the status system, does not have any form of power which would not be dependent on the Fiend. So all the Fiend is doing is creating herself more power. It's where the status plays another role. The status justify the abuse. The status justify the exploitation. Now, the Fiend needs to abuse others because she needs resources, but she also needs to abuse others because she has to justify her actual position of superiority. If she does not abuse others on a regular basis, these others may question the strength of the Fiend. And the Fiend does not need this kind of questioning. She's unstable, she's insecure, she's weak mentally and sometimes physically. So she needs to have a permanent grasp on the mind of the one she depends on. Which is why the inferiority of the subservient, of the dependent, should become a part of their identity. Which, and you'll see that all of that is synergistic, which the Fiend is actually extremely aware of. Since she's herself considering herself as inferior, which is why she's became a Fiend in the first place. A Fiend is inherently a fool, an idiot. She wants to exploit others to strengthen herself, which only works in the very short term. The short-termism of the Fiend, by opposition of many other antagonists which are trying to establish sustainable relationships. The short-termism of the Fiend is her greatest weakness. And unfaithfulness here is not the direct weakness. Unfaithfulness is not the weakness itself. Unfaithfulness is just the manifestation of the short-termism. Since the Fiend thinks in terms of abuse, perpetual abuse, repeated abuse, she will never be faithful to any of her collaborators. And there comes the grasp on the collaborator's identity. She has to make her collaborator think that they're inferior, that it's part of their identity, for her faithfulness, for her unfaithfulness, for her faithlessness to be effective. If you've enjoyed this content and want to know more on this topic, check our video on the 6 surefire way to create an antagonist.